Hey everyone, today is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually meeting up with an acquaintance of mine, and we are going to go run around the northeastern part of the Kanto region and go see some places associated with the greatest samurai, in my opinion, of all time, Taira no Masakado. So I plan on taking some shots, some video, because this is going to be like, a travel vlog type deal, but we're going to be visiting some places that most people don't go. These places are out in the boonies. You are going to need a car usually to get there, which most tourists don't have. But so come along with me and let's go learn about the greatest samurai that ever lived. Again, Taira no Masakado. So, onward. Okay, so the first stop that we have here is もう一度何と言いますか？国玉 Kunitama Jinja. So this is a shrine that is in the Bando, is in the city of Bando, and supposedly it was built in honor of Taira no Masakado to worship him as a god. Not long after he died, and apparently it was set up by the locals around here. And I've never been here before. I'll show you. Let me see if I can. Actually, I don't know how to turn the camera around, but the actual building. The main building, it looks like, is old school style thatched roofing, which is awesome. But it's currently in the middle of summer. You know, it's just at the end of July, and it's currently like a balmy mid 80 degrees right now, and classic Japanese humidity. So it's going to be a little hot today, but I will show you around this place. It looks like there's a pathway, so I'm gonna take some video from over here. Anyway. Okay, so this area behind me is in the Shomonki. It's known as Ishi Eijo. Okay, this is a camp. This is supposedly a camp where Masakado spent a lot of his time. It was a camp. It was a military camp, and the most important story from this place is actually when Masakado was hanging out here. This is where he was camped, and his enemy, Uncle Yoshikane, decided to attack him at night. Now, luckily for Masakado, he had an inside guy in Yoshikane's camp, and that inside guy came and told him that Yoshikane was coming to attack him, and that judging by their numbers, they were going to lose. And everybody in Masakado's camp started freaking out. They're like, oh, this is it, we're done for, we can't do anything. And Masakado comes out and he gives this rousing speech that yes, they can win, that if you look into some of the Chinese histories and stuff, there are instances of men pulling off grand victories. And so Masakado gives this rousing speech and gets everybody fired up and pumped up, and they eventually win that fight. So that's supposedly where this happened. So this is a really cool thing. That's a constant theme with Masakado, is that he gets attacked. He almost never when you read the Shomonki, it almost seems like he never is the one to instigate fights. He always is on the receiving end, and he's oftentimes outnumbered and outmanned, but he ends up coming out on top anyway. So that's one of the reasons why Masakado is just the coolest. Anyway. So this is a place I was not familiar with, but this is supposedly in legend a place where Taira no Masakado came when he was thirsty one time, and he was thirsty and hanging around here, and he suddenly looked, and all of a sudden there was this old man there, and this old man went and moved a rock, and all of a sudden this water sprang out of nowhere. It's, you know, this spring, right? They call it a well, then Ido, but it's a spring, right? And so Masakado got his fill, and then when he looked again, the old man was gone. So this is another place that's connected to Taira no Masakado. It's actually really beautiful, especially with those pink flowers there. And then as you can see all behind me, these beautiful, these really beautiful rice fields that are just starting to get kind of big. I don't see any stalks. I don't see any little rice on them yet, but it's gorgeous. Anyway, onward. And this behind me is supposedly the shrine that is dedicated to that mysterious old man, and the place is actually just down there. It's on the other side of this house that we were just at. But this is apparently the shrine dedicated to that mysterious old man that brought forth water out of the ground for Taira no Masakado. So I think it's Ichigon Jinja is what it's called, Ichigon Jinja. Anyway, moving on. Well, I guess it's just a nice little thing here that if you're in Bando city, it's a place you can come check out. It's really pretty. Anyway, onward. Excuse me. Anyway, and behind me here is a beautiful sakura tree. Unfortunately, it's not sakura season right now, otherwise it would probably be even more beautiful. But apparently this is a Kokonoe no sakura, which is a ninefold sakura, which is a fancy way basically of saying that, referring to the sakura that supposedly stands outside of the imperial palace. Now, according to this, what is the stone placard, whatever you want to call it, apparently this sakura, according to legend, this sakura originally came from Kyoto. It was I guess a seedling, an offshoot of the sakura that is in the front of the imperial palace in Kyoto. And this was supposedly, I guess this was to symbolize Masakado when he declared himself the new emperor, the Shinno, right? This was supposedly the sakura that he was going to use to be his Kokonoe no sakura, right? His sakura in front of his palace. And apparently there were 10 of these originally, and they said that when spring came and sakura season came, it looked like the clouds. They were so beautiful and white and gorgeous and stuff. So this, I don't know what legend this comes from or where you can find this as far as like official sources, but according to legend, this is a very important tree for Taira no Masakado, and of course, it's not far from that previous area we were just at, this previous couple areas we were just at, and as you can see, there's all this gorgeous rice field farmland here all around it. So anyway, just another really cool place. I really appreciate it for giving the shade in this this very hot weather. Anyway, see ya. Well, onward to the next place, eh? Okay, and this place is apparently the place where Taira no Masakado would train horses. Now, it's kind of in the middle of the city, and it's next to a fairly busy street, but if you know anything about the warriors of the Heian period, they were known for horseback riding and horseback archery. And so this place was probably extremely important to Taira no Masakado. It was probably, you know, the source of his power as a warrior, because this is where you trained your horses. And as you can tell from the hat, and I guess you can maybe see the boots down there, but I'm no pro at riding horses, but I have ridden some, and I do very much enjoy it, and I would love to be better at it. But this kind of stuff is actually why I started getting into American Western stuff. Because when you look into the history of the samurai, especially of the Heian period, Taira no Masakado, honestly, if he were to come to our time and he had a choice between hanging out with like a professor of classical Japanese, of Japanese history or whatever, he probably wouldn't find that very enjoyable. Instead, he would rather go to a rodeo where he could see people riding, bucking broncos and bull riding and doing all of that stuff that cowboys do, because that's basically what he was doing. And so he would have probably thought that that was amazing and super cool and wanted to be a part of that, as opposed to hanging out with a bunch of hoity-toity elites who spend all their days learning how to read dead languages and stuff. So would Taira, Masakado, and I get along? Maybe. He might think that I'm kind of a wimp because I am one of those, well, I'm not hoity-toity, but I definitely like spending time studying dead languages and doing things that aren't particularly practical. But, I think we would get along. At least I hope we would get along. And I would like to be better at horse riding and doing those like physical, manly things too. I think that would be great. Anyways, onward. Okay, so as far as I can tell, this big tree behind me and the hill right here is supposedly where Masakado's body is buried. Because when Masakado was killed, he was beheaded and his head was taken back to Kyoto. And then supposedly what happened is it came back alive and then flew all the way, or tried to fly all the way back here, where it was shot down and ended up in the Otemachi, in the Kubizuka, supposedly where it is now. But that says Kubizuka, and that's the Kubizuka just means, the place, the head mound, right? That's the place he's most famous for, if you want to go there, partly because it's in the middle of Tokyo, so it's easy to get to. But this is supposedly where his body is buried. And I like this because Masakado was from this area, from the Bando area. This is where he hung around. And you can clearly see, you walk around here, I don't know how much you can see, but this place is clearly kept up very nicely. The people whoever run this do a fantastic job of making sure that everything is nice and good. And there is definitely a different, I guess, air about it because of it. But apparently, according to this little placard here, this placard over here, right? Apparently there are some instances where Masakado was helped by a young girl who was named, she wasn't named, but she's just called the Kikyo, right? Which is the name of a flower. And this is the place that I really wanted to come. What's really cool is they also, at the, the office building that they have here, they just have a little place out in front where you can put some money in, and then you can get the little seals and stuff that you're supposed to put in your little booklet that you go around, you take to different temples and shrines and stuff as proof that you've been there. So this so far is my favorite place on the trip by far. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and supposedly here lies the body of the greatest warrior in Japanese history, which is amazing. So honestly, this is great. Hopefully I can give you some more visuals, just show the place. This is definitely a place I would recommend if you come visit Japan. Although again, it's out of the way, so maybe that's for the best, so it doesn't get overcrowded with tourism. But it's wonderful. I'm gonna have to come back here in the fall. Oh yeah, see, I can see this is a maple tree right here. Come back in the fall, it's gonna be gorgeous. Oh my goodness, we'll see about it. Anyways, see if there's anything else that I have to show you. Actually, before I go, I just remembered. This place is called Enmyoin, okay? So it's in the Kanda mountain, Kanda-san, supposedly, which again, the main shrine in Tokyo that's dedicated to Masakado is called Kanda Jinja, which is the Kanda shrine, right? Kanda Jinja. But apparently that's just named after this place, Kanda mountain. Even though it doesn't really look like a mountain to me, but they tend to call sacred places mountains, Kanda-san, right? So Enmyoin is specifically this place for Masakado's body, for his body, his torso and everything else. So anyway, super cool, so freaking cool, it's so freaking cool. Okay, so I just learned something about Masakado. So I assumed that Masakado was buried underneath this tree, but apparently according to this placard over here, this placard, essentially we don't know where Masakado is, where his body is buried specifically. It's somewhere in this region, supposedly, because apparently there were some people who came and tried to like dig up his body for whatever reason. And so the people, they moved his body and said that the people who were in charge of this place, wanting to keep Masakado's body, let him rest in peace, they moved his body and they buried it somewhere, and they don't tell anybody where it is. And then because this is now considered a sacred area, right, you can't just come in here and start digging stuff up. So you have to, you'd have to jump through a bunch of hoops. So apparently Masakado's body is buried somewhere in here, but we don't know where. But honestly, I think that's fine. Let the greatest warrior in Japanese history rest in peace, quite frankly. He did his thing, we have his records, and yeah. So he's somewhere around here. Don't know where, but that's part of the mystery, that's part of the fun. We can all still remember him through these beautiful, I mean, again, look at this. Look at this building. Look at how beautifully red and just stark that is. That's amazing. Anyway, and again, this whole place is upkept so beautifully. It's gorgeous. Anyway. So here we are at Hitokonushi Jinja と言いますか? Hitokonushi. Okay. So this is apparently a jinja, a shrine dedicated to a god that Masakado actually worshipped. The tales say, or according to what's a rumor, I guess, the Soma family that technically has most of what it does up in the north of here, but they're descendants from Masakado. Apparently they would come here and they would they would patronize this shrine a lot. This is one of the gods of their clan, one of the main gods of their clan. So it's really cool. Oh, look. それはFujidana? Fujidana. There's a what is it? A wisteria thing there where you grow wisteria, and wisteria is probably my favorite flower. Japanese flower. But anyway, this is a really nice place. Definitely come check this place out if you get the opportunity. Again, it's kind of out of the way in Bando. Bando shi ni imasu yo ne. Yeah. So it's here in Bando. So if you ever get the chance, check it out. But yeah, very nice place. Very, very big jinja. Very, very fancy. Okay, so behind me, you can see this bell, right? So this bell, according to legend, was a bell that Taira no Masakado used when he would go in fights. You know, it's kind of a signal thing. You could hit it once, it means attack. You could maybe hit it twice, and it means retreat. You know, it was just a way of communication. But apparently, the way it sounds, it has this very nostalgic noise to it. And if you strike it, it makes people want to go home. It makes people long for home and want to go back. And it also makes them fight harder, because then when you're reminded of your home and the things that you're fighting for, you'll fight a little bit harder. I also apologize for how loud the cicadas are, but this is a really beautiful place. Lots of green all around. There's the temple. But I find it really interesting because there are two phrases when Masakado went to the capital after he was summoned there, after the first instigations, after all of the hubbub with his uncle Yoshikane and Minamoto no Mamoru. He went to the capital to give an accounting for everything that he did, and to plead for his case so he didn't get in trouble. And after everything was done in the capital and everybody decided that Masakado hadn't done anything wrong, basically what ended up happening is at the end of that little chapter, it says that Masakado really wants to return home, and it uses two phrases. It says something to the effect of like, horses long for the north winds and birds always long for the southern branches. And the idea is that because horses in Chinese literature, horses came from the north, from where the Mongols and the northern peoples, horses have this innate longing for the north wind. When winds come out of the north, they smell it and they go, oh, I want to go back to where I'm from. Birds the same way. Birds always migrate south and then they come back, but when the southern winds come up, they always feel it and they want to go back home. And so in the same way, it's funny that they use that, and now they also have this bell that supposedly kind of expresses that same idea of always wanting to go home, because even though Taira no Masakado did spend some time in the capital, he always wanted to be out in the east with other warriors among the people who weren't as high class, the salt of the earth people. That's where he felt most at home. Anyway, it's just a fun little tidbit. This temple is called Sainenji, and for this bell, it's apparently connected to Masakado. But anyways, moving on. So, there is a short little introduction to some places that are found in the city of Bando in the province of Ibaraki in the eastern part of Japan that I was able to visit that were also related to the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest warrior of Japanese history, Taira no Masakado. So there's two things I want to explain. One, why am I making videos about places that nobody has ever gone? Well, I mean, honestly, tourism in Japan is really a booming industry right now, and there's a lot of people coming over here, but all of the tourism tends to be concentrated in just a handful of locations. Everybody goes to Tokyo, everybody goes to Kyoto, everybody goes to see Kiyomizu-dera, and everybody goes to Asakusa, and everybody goes to the same places. Fushimi Inari Jinja is another one that everybody goes to. But I would like to showcase to some people places that are a little bit more out of the way, places that I feel like deserve just as much love and attention as some of these other places, but because it's harder to get to, they don't get as much love. Now, I would also suggest that if you do have the opportunity, please go check these places out instead of sticking around all of the same haunts, because those places are really overcrowded. I went to Kyoto myself and there were so many people there. It was kind of ridiculous. But so maybe if we can get the word out that there are other places in Japan besides these main places, then maybe the tourism will spread itself a little more thinly and make it easier for the Japanese people to handle, while still giving them all of the benefits of a tourism economy, okay? So the other reason that I'm making this is because if you really want to enjoy tourism in your time in Japan, then yes, it's really cool to go see some of these places, and yes, they're beautiful, and the architecture is great, and it's a cool experience and all. But what can take just a cool experience and turn it up to something almost quasi-religious, quasi-sacred, almost sacred, is when you learn the stories behind these places, when you learned the people who built these places and why they did and what happened there. Then everything that you see gains a much deeper significance and becomes far more important to you and far more interesting. And so by understanding the history of some of these places and visiting places where there was really important history, I was able to enjoy things myself, and maybe hopefully I can impart some of this knowledge to you guys, so if and when you do come to Japan and you do go exploring some of these places, you can understand why they're so special too. And the second thing that I wanted to talk about in this instance is why I claim Taira no Masakado as the greatest warrior Japan has ever seen, okay? Because there have been plenty of warriors in Japanese history, and there have been a lot, and I'm sure everybody will argue with me, and because nobody ever says Taira no Masakado, why am I saying that? Well, two reasons, or actually a few reasons rather. Number one is that Taira no Masakado was a great warrior. I mean, he just was. I mean, there were instances where he was outmanned 3-1 and he still wins. There's other instances, other battles where he had the drop got on him. He got the drop on him. So he had the drop gotten on whatever. He was ambushed and he was on the back foot and he still wins. Now, he did lose sometimes, but he tended to win, and he oftentimes won when the odds were against him. He also was just a really good fighter. I mean, at the final battle, he himself, despite being a commander and technically proclaiming himself as the new emperor and was supposedly going to rule an entire new region himself, he went out and fought himself. He was a warrior through and through. He was really good at what he did. And the other thing that's really cool about him is he is referred to as the first samurai. He was the first big occurrence. His rebellion was the first big thing that indicated to the rest of Japan that the warriors of Japan were becoming their own like separate block, their own separate things. They were considering themselves as distinct from the aristocrats in the capital, and they were rallying together, and they were going to one day challenge the court authority, and eventually set up their own governments. Taira no Masakado was kind of the first one to do that, and while he wasn't successful, he kind of laid the groundwork for all of the rest of it to happen afterwards, for the Minamoto clan, for the shoguns, and all of that jazz. So that's really cool too. But the main reason why I say Taira no Masakado is the greatest warrior is not just because he was a great warrior, but because the more I look into his story, the more I come to the conclusion that he was also just a good man. He was good. He was righteous. He tried to be just, right? When I first understood the story of Taira no Masakado, when I first really looked into it, it was when I was actually translating in the stories from the Konjaku Monogatari Shu about him, the one story that I did make into a 3-part series on the channel here, so please, if you have time, go check that out. But after reading that, I was very interested because, he's a warrior, he was very significant, he rebelled against the central authority, that's really cool. And then I started looking into it more. I eventually got a copy of the Shomonki, which is technically written in Kanbun, which is like Chinese, except it's classical Chinese, except you're supposed to pronounce it and read it like it's Japanese. So basically I'm learning Chinese now, but I've been learning how to read that, and I've read through it once, and I'm currently working on it a second time where I'm going a little bit more in depth and understanding it. But the more I read, the more I come to the conclusion again that Taira no Masakado was actually a good man. He almost never was the first one to start the fight. He almost always gets attacked, and then when he responds ferociously. Don't get me wrong, like he's a warrior, okay? He does what warriors does. He kills people and he breaks things. That's what he's really good at. But he almost never starts these fights. He is always attacked. And yet, despite being attacked, he shows mercy to his enemies. Like, there's one instance where his uncle, having attacked him and starting a war, he has his uncle trapped in a government building with his own men, his own army surrounding this building, and at his mercy, okay? And at this point, Taira no Masakado, again, he was attacked. He was attacked by this man. He did not bring the fight to him. The old man, his uncle, brought the fight to Masakado, okay? So Masakado could have just annihilated him right there. Could have just destroyed him and gone about. Maybe that could have even been a power play to try to seize control of the entirety of the Taira clan for himself. But he didn't do that. He lets his uncle go. There's another instance where Taira no Masakado's men, during some warring, a different warring after the rebellion actually starts, Taira no Masakado's men captures 2 women. And as soon as Masakado learns of this, he sends a command to his men not to, and I'm going to be a little euphemistic about this, not to abuse them, okay? Not to abuse them, right? He sends this command to them. Unfortunately for them, the command comes a little bit later than it needed to, and they had already been taken advantage of, shall we say, again, speaking euphemistically here, okay? Now, when Masakado understands this, right, Masakado realizes he is the commander, he is the one in charge, the buck stops with him, and so he feels like he needs to do something to fix the situation. And so, despite these 2 women being very important women to his enemies and really good bargaining chips, he decides that although he can't make up for the situation perfectly, because what happened, he, instead of using them as bargaining chips, like he was probably intending to do, he sets them free. There's also the instance of when he does go about actually conquering the 8 provinces of the East, he never slays the governors. He goes in there, he takes their seals of authority, he takes their symbols of authority, and then he gives them an escort back to the capital and makes sure they get there safely. There's an actual phrase in the Shomonki, in the main source, the thing that I am reading, the main source for Masakado's life, or his rebellion rather, that says that Masakado had a penchant for protecting those who needed him. Masakado prided himself on protecting those less fortunate, those weaker than him. And then the last final thing that I just really relate to with Masakado, right? Masakado was a 5th generation descendant of the Emperor Kammen, okay? Masakado was a nobleman. He was raised in nobility. He was raised amongst all of the high trappings of fancy life, okay? However, despite that, because he was raised in the East, which at the time was like just a step below, it was right next to the frontier land. It was wild, it was rugged, it was harsh. Because he grew up in the East, he became kind of rugged and harsh and practical, very masculine, but he loved his home. There are multiple instances where Taira no Masakado, he's in the capital, and it said, well, okay, there's one instance where he's in the capital, and it says how much he longs to go back home. He goes to the capital, takes care of his business, and he just wants to get back home. He just wants to go back to the big rolling fields, the horse ranches, the trees, the nature, the farmers, the warriors. He does not want to be in the capital, and he seems to not really have any time for the capital aristocrats and all of their fancy high-class society, where they are more concerned with, are you wearing the correct combination of clothing on top of each other in the right season and during the right time, and if you don't, how dare you, we're just going to exclude you from our exclusive circles, right? Taira no Masakado seemed to have very little patience for that, and was far more interested in practical things like keeping his people fed, keeping his people protected, and, you know, things that men of action, salt of the earth type men are much more concerned with. And while I do appreciate things like the Tale of Genji, I love the poetry, I love the emotional nuance of classical Japanese literature and everything, I do still understand the need for practical skills and the masculine arts, I guess you could say. I love when both of them can combine, and we do see Taira no Masakado in the show Monkey does write poetry at least twice, and he constantly refers to historical precedents for when he goes to battle or when he decides he's going to rebel. Masakado was educated and skilled in the arts to some degree, but he at heart was a warrior, and he loved being out in the East. He loved his home, he loved his people. And maybe I'm romanticizing things a little bit excessively, that's true, but you know, I do like romanticizing things because I want the world to be good, and I want the world to be better if I can make it. And maybe by seeing the good in the world and trying to interpret things in a good light, as long as I'm also a little bit aware that, you know, this is real life, and real life doesn't meet my expectations or my hopes all the time. But maybe if I can focus on the good things and interpret things in a good way, maybe I can make the world a little bit better of a place. Anyway, that's enough rambling from me. That's why I made these videos. Hopefully you enjoyed it. So, and if you did, please feel free to like the video. Please subscribe to the channel, because I do plan on still traveling around a little bit and showing you some other places. Again, please feel free to check out the 3-part series that I did discussing, well, retelling the story of Taira no Masakado. And maybe I am very seriously considering that in the future, after I get done reading the Shomonki and taking notes on it, of telling you guys the full story of Taira no Masakado, aka the greatest warrior in Japanese history, in my humble opinion. So if you want to hear more about that, please let me know in the comments, but I'm going to leave it off there. This is already plenty long, and you have plenty of things to look at. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for listening all the way up to the end here if you really have. Ito katajike no koso, ito ureshu koso, hanberi kere, as Masakado probably would say. And hopefully we will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Goodbye.